Hi guys, welcome back to Infinite Possibilities, the podcast where we explore the lives of amazing people, their choices, challenges and opportunities. And today I have a very special guest, Katie.
Hi.
Hey Katie, so how's it going?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Good, it's Friday, so happy that it's nearly the weekend.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Yeah, cool. So Katie, what's your job? What kind of stuff do you do?
So I'm a career advisor as part of Bell Careers and Employability at UQ, and I've been in the team since September, so it's a reasonably new role for me.
Yeah.
And I manage our professional experience portfolio in the team, which means that I manage our student work experience program and also our career mentoring program. So they're two of the longer established programs that we have in the team, but they're really valuable for students to be able to help and build their employability mindset and gain some really practical experience and making industry connections as well from the career mentoring program. So
very important job, and I've done both the programs, so
excellent.
We'll dive into that a bit later. Yeah, so we want to kind of see what kind of childhood Katie had and how she got to where she is today. So Katie, what kind of child were you like growing up?
Oh goodness, that was a very long time ago. I was a pretty normal kid, I think. I wasn't particularly adventurous. I wasn't particularly great on the academic side of things, but I was really strong on sport. So I always preferred the PE and home economics subjects as opposed to maths and English. But I did a lot of sport growing up. We did a lot of camping, so a lot of outdoor adventures with my family. And yeah, I think I had a pretty good childhood, pretty steady, so nothing crazy. I was born in Maryborough, just a couple of hours north of Brisbane, but I've grown up in Brisbane. So yeah, a lot of our family adventures and holidays were spent at Inskip Point, which is sort of like Rainbow Beach up north. And yeah, a lot of camping and things like that, which was fun, but I play hockey, so I've played hockey since I was a kid. I'm not going to give away my age, but that's a very long time that I've played hockey, and I still play hockey to this day. So it's the one thing that's been pretty constant through my childhood and through my adult life as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Hockey was there for you through all your life
yes,
changes.
Absolutely. It's been the one constant, and I actually don't know what I'd do on my weekends if I didn't play hockey. Through February to September. It's the length of a hockey season. So it's been my hobby. It's my stress relief. It's a really good way of me being able to exercise some of my leadership skills as well, which I love. But also I've got a really great network of friends through hockey, which is really important to me. So
that's awesome. And how did you discover hockey?
My parents played hockey, so I come from a bit of a hockey family. A lot of my aunts and uncles played hockey as well, but mum and dad were really heavily into hockey in Maryborough, and then I kind of got into that when I was younger as well. My brother never stuck with it, but I did. He was into more cricket and football, and I was more into hockey, so it's just one of those sports that I think, because I was exposed to through family, that I've just kind of stuck with it, and it's a really good team sport. I love it.
Yeah. That's cool. And what makes hockey so special in your mind compared to other sports? Because you were quite sporty when you were young. Yeah,
I did athletics, I did softball, I did hockey. I think hockey is a really good mix of, technique. There's a lot of skill involved. It's, there's a bigger team. You've got 14 to 15 people in a team, so there's really got good camaraderie there. I've never really stuck with the individual sports like athletics or anything like that, but I think I just love the vibe. It's a really fast-paced game as well. And
dangerous too.
It can be. It's not designed to be, but sometimes it can be if you get a rogue hockey ball on a knee or a finger or something like that. But it's a really good balance, I think, of skill, teamwork, a lot of running, which I'm not too keen on, but I'd prefer to run around a hockey field than just go for a run. So it's a really good sport, and it's probably one that's becoming a lot more popular in Australia, at least anyway. So
that's cool. One more on the hockey question.
It's okay.
So from a lifetime of hockey, what kind of injuries have you sustained? What can one expect?
So I've actually, on the injury front, I've been pretty lucky. thankfully. I haven't broken any bones, but I've had many a sprained ankle. I get not an injury, but I get a really horrible hockey tan. So between the bottom of my knee and sort of just above my knee, I get nice and brown, but everything else is white. But I've had, probably the worst of it is, sprained ankles. Mostly as I get older, it's just muscle soreness and stiffness and parts of your body hurt that didn't hurt last year. So I've been reasonably lucky though, no major injuries. So
surprised you never got smashed by a hockey ball.
I have, but not anywhere that has. When I lived in Melbourne, I played hockey and I got hit just here with a hockey ball, and I was lucky I didn't get a concussion or anything serious from that. Just a bit of a headache for a few days. So that was probably the extent of the seriousness of my.
Glad you're still here.
Yeah, I can't say that for some of my other friends, but I've been pretty lucky. I had a ball to the face just the other week, but I didn't get no blood, so that was good.
Wow, very lucky career then. Yeah, and so what about personality-wise? So you were very sporty. Does that mean you were a bit of a smart aleck at school?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever been a smart aleck. I think there's a sarcastic side to my personality sometimes, but I don't think I've ever been a clown or very sarcastic. I think I'm pretty down to earth, pretty easy to talk to, and so no, I was never the class clown, or I was kind of somewhere in that middle of the introvert and extrovert spectrum, I'd say, but I don't really generally like to be in lots of big groups of people, and it might take a little bit of time to warm to me or for me to warm to others, but I'm generally, I think, a pretty easygoing person in terms of my personality.
Yeah, sounds like best of both worlds, right? Neither too loud, neither nor too
I don't
quiet.
know, other people's opinion of me might be different, but that's kind of what I see of myself, so.
Yeah, that's cool. And so how was high school, and when you were thinking in terms of career, were there any sort of thoughts running through your mind?
Yeah, so high school again was a really long time ago, but when I think back to when I was in high school and sort of figuring out what I wanted to do once I'd finished school, because I had that sporty background and that interest in diet, at one point I thought, maybe I'll be a teacher. So I thought at one point, maybe I'll go and be a PE teacher. There was another point where I thought I'd like to go and be a dietitian. But, I was never particularly academic. I always got solid grades, but I was never, outstanding, and I was never bottom apart from maths. I was terrible at numbers, so I really struggled with maths. But when I was kind of figuring out that path, I didn't quite know what I wanted. I think when you're 16 or 17 and finishing high school, it's always kind of a bit hard to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. But, I can remember when I graduated from grade 12, you'd obviously put in your QTAC preferences. I don't know what they're called now, but at the time they were QTAC, and you put in your top 6 preferences for what you wanted to study. And I remember being really overwhelmed by that process, and I think I might have put down some dietetics and, those kind of degrees on my QTAC preference form, but I threw in a business one in there as well, and I think it was my last preference. I got an OP12, which wasn't terrible, but I put in my preference for a Bachelor of Business, a Diploma of Business, so it was a dual where you kind of do your first year at TAFE, and then that would give you credit to when you started your university degree. And I got that. So it was a Diploma of Business / Bachelor of Business, where I started out at TAFE and then transferred over into QUT. So I did that, and I was really disappointed, but then I was like, oh, well, my dad at the time said, do a business degree. There's lots of avenues. There's lots of different parts of business that you can study and major in. And I thought, well, why not? I'll give it a go. So that's what I did. And the year after I finished high school, I started at TAFE, and that then led me to my degree. So a bit of a journey of things, and it's probably not something that I thought I'd end up in initially, but, life takes you in all different directions, and I think it was a good experience for me to do that, and TAFE was a much easier transition than going from, high school to TAFE than, I suppose, high school to straight into university. Different style of learning and different sort of subjects and things like that maybe were a little bit more easier at 17 than going straight to university.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. And so talk to me more about sort of the difference between TAFE and uni for maybe people who want to sort of ease their way in as well.
So I did TAFE back in the early 2000s after I graduated, and I think it was much more structured. So the classes was a little bit more, like I did more subjects than I would have at university, but it was sort of like a 5-day commitment where I'd be there from like 9 till 4, so it was similar to school hours. You know, it still allowed me to go and have a casual job and stuff like that, but I think it was a little bit more, I felt like it was maybe a little bit more supported. And there was still that academic side of, you know, writing assignments and all of your research and things like that, but was maybe a little bit of an easier transition than maybe going straight to university. So I quite liked that. It suited my personality and the way I like to learn. And, you know, it was a really great experience. I did enjoy it so much that I went back and did another diploma in HR, which was a bit silly, but I did it anyway. And that was before I went back to uni.
Oh wait, so you went to TAFE and then you did uni and then you went back to TAFE?
So I went to TAFE. I did that for 12 months, and then the year after that it allowed me to get into QUT. So then I started at QUT and I did a semester. And then I didn't really like that, but then I went back to TAFE and I did a diploma of HR. But then I spent a couple of years as a bit of a break while I went and worked full time, and then a couple of years later I went back and finished my degree.
Oh, that's awesome. And then, so what was your kind of university experience that one semester? You're like, no, take me back.
I only did it part-time, and I think, you know, you go through 5 years of high school and then, you know, a year of study, and you kind of, for me, I was kind of sick of it, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. So I really wanted to get a job. And I was working at Hungry Jack's at the time through sort of the end of high school, and then when I was at TAFE, and then when I had that bit of break, I went and worked at Hungry Jack's full time. But then I thought, you know, I don't want a career in fast food. I was sort of a shift supervisor and things like that. But I thought, no, I'll go and get an office job. And my family members were like, go and get a job in a law firm. It'll set you up for life and it'll give you really good experience. And I thought, okay, well, I'll try that. So I got a job as as sort of like a mailroom clerk. So I was sort of the go-to person for the mailroom. I'd distribute the mail, I'd do all the printing, you know, at a law firm there's lots of briefs and things like that to photocopy. So that was my job for a little while, and then I moved into a legal secretary role. So yeah, that kind of entry into the workforce was really important to me, to be able to gain some experience, earn some money that was a little bit more than just fast food, because I spent the majority of my 20s travelling around the world doing different overseas trips every year if I could afford it. So you know, that was the primary purpose. But and that job, my first job in a law firm, really helped me, you know, balance that. And although you only have 4 weeks of annual leave once you start working full time, so I really tried to utilise that as much as I could and go and travel a bit as well.
Oh, you didn't tell me about that travel bug before. Yeah, so tell me more. Like, when did you start travelling, and how do you pick your locations, with friends or solo?
So through my 20s, I did a lot of travel with friends. I think my first overseas holiday was to Thailand. So
wow,
to
you're
Phuket.
Going big.
Yeah. So I went to Phuket with a friend. We did it pretty nicely. We stayed in a Club Med, so that was a good first experience overseas, and that was probably in my early 20s when I did that. But then, you know, picking holidays and overseas trips, I think it was probably dependent on the group of friends that you had at the time, and the locations that we wanted to go to. So I did a trip over to South America. So we did Brazil and Cuba. We went to Mexico. We went to the States for a couple of days. So it was a pretty big sort of whirlwind trip, that one. It was about 4 or 5 weeks, I think. And then sort of a couple of trips I've done Bali, I've done New Zealand. You know, about 8 years ago, my brother lived in Scotland, so I went and visited.
Good excuse.
went to the UK, did Scotland, and then the year after that went back with my parents to see them again, and we tacked on Italy, and I've seen parts of Germany. And so I think, pre-COVID, I tried to do a lot of international travel, but that has obviously been less so in the last sort of 3 years. But, I've really loved traveling in my 20s. I think it's really character building. It's really great to experience different cultures, different food. I don't know. I think, you learn a lot about yourself when you travel, and I really enjoyed that, and putting yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. So,
yeah, that's pretty cool. And have you ever done any solo trips then?
Yes, so I went to Sri Lanka in 2017 or 2016, I think. So I decided to do that by myself. I got, after I turned 30, I think the idea of individual travel or solo travel became a lot more appealing, because your friends sort of start to get married and have children, and so those big group holidays become less accessible. It's kind of harder to get together with groups of people. So I thought, well, I'd rather travel independently and go and see the parts of the world that I want to see by myself, and you can join tours. And so I did Sri Lanka by myself. It's probably the last solo holiday that I did overseas, but I really enjoyed that one. It was really fun.
Yeah, that's cool. And I guess maybe how do you a lot of people, they're especially afraid of doing solo travel, especially as a woman. So is there any sort of steps or measures, or are you, learn a bit of self-defense before you head off, or how does...
No, I've never done self-defense, although I think I'm pretty savvy, and I've got a pretty good right hook. So I think if anyone came up to me on the street, hopefully I'd be able to defend myself. But I think, you've got to be sensible, pick locations that... do your research before you travel, know where you're going, and make sure that the people, if you're going by yourself, the people at home that are staying here have all of your itinerary details and your contact details, and you're checking in with people regularly. When I went to Sri Lanka, I did join a tour, so even though I travelled by myself, I was never by myself when I was away, apart from maybe, travelling on the plane to and from, and wherever transit you need to do in between. But, I think I've always been quite independent and enjoy, meeting new people and being around others. So, I think just being sensible and, never go down a dark alley by yourself and all those sort of things. And I've always been pretty wary of that sort of stuff. So,
yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Have you ever found yourself in any dangerous situations though?
No, thankfully.
Wow, despite so much travel, so many countries.
No, I mean in Brazil there were a couple of dicey moments, and you hear from it. Not that I personally experienced, but you hear stories from other people, and so just being really, really aware of that. But I kind of avoid risk, so I've never been a massive risk taker. So I always try and stick to the safe option for the most part. But always try to be sensible.
And also, what do you think personally is the value of traveling? Because maybe once you've done quite a few countries, what keeps you coming back?
To Australia or going overseas?
Still wanting to do those sort of yearly travels.
Yeah.
And why stay in Australia? It's
Well, I mean, I think the world has a lot to offer. There's there's a lot we can learn from other cultures. I think just being able to see different parts of the world gives you a great appreciation for diversity, different cultural backgrounds. It's really interesting just to see, different landmarks in the world, and being able to experience different things. I think if you're lucky enough to be able to travel and have those options financially and personally, it's a great way to just, I suppose, enrich your life and have different stories to tell and experiences to experience. And I've been, really lucky, I suppose, where I've been able to, afford to go on a number of different overseas opportunities, because I know when my parents were my age, they never did, because they were, it wasn't a thing to do, 30 years ago. So to have those opportunities now and taking advantage of them, I think has been really important to me. So
good on you.
Yeah.
Does it ever sort of lose its novelty?
I I think for me, I mean, I don't think it'll ever lose its novelty. I think as you grow older and you get, your experiences change and what you are willing to compromise for. When I was in my 20s, I was quite happy to sleep in a backpacker hotel and, kind of slum it a little bit. But now that I'm a bit older and I've had different experiences, your comfort levels change. And so, I don't think, I think they will always evolve, but going through and having those different experiences, you kind of learn what you like. And I don't think the novelty will ever wear off. I think, given COVID, the comfort level of being able to travel internationally has maybe changed for me personally. I don't feel as comfortable yet going overseas, but, domestic travel I've done a little bit more of in the last year, and that, starting with stepping stones. So maybe I might try and work up to an international holiday at some point next year, but I think just, the COVID situation hasn't helped that a lot, but I think it's getting better, so.
Yeah, sounds good. And why not just work overseas? Why come back to Australia for work?
Oh, for me personally, I went through a bit of a decision-making process probably about 4 years ago, where I was thinking, actually a bit longer than that. It was probably about 6 or 7 years ago when I was in my late 20s and I was thinking about what I wanted to do. And at one point I did decide, I did have a thought about going and living in London and working there. And I was working for an international law firm at the time where they probably would have been able to accommodate something for me. And when I went on one of my trips to the UK, I actually went and visited the Norton Fulbright office when I was over there, had a chat, and sort of when I came home I decided, my family is really important to me. I didn't want to go and move that far away. So I decided to buy a unit. So I bought property instead and spent my money on that as opposed to just going and leaving overseas. But, later I did decide to move to Sydney, which was kind of my rebellious sort of moving away from Brisbane time.
London.
Yeah, not really, but kind of. And so, I think, there's lots of benefits to living overseas or living in a different location. But for me, I suppose I really didn't want to be that far away from my family and my friends, and I was moving over there by myself, and I think that going on an overseas holiday is different to packing up your life and moving over there. So I decided to just stay in Australia. I think, there's a lot of great opportunities here to start your career, and, it's just being able to find them, so.
Yeah, and I guess a hypothetical question, do you think that if, that decision cropped up maybe in your earlier 20s, like the chance to live in London and work there, do you think you might have taken it, being like younger and more, adventure? Because I think when you get later in life, you feel like, family is very important, you have a lot of priorities, you have a lot of different other sort of baggages before just dropping everything and going.
I don't think I would have.
Oh,
I don't think I would have.
surprised.
I don't think, reflecting back on it, I've always been quite content with my life here, and so I don't think I would have in my 20s, because I was still in my 20s when I was contemplating it. I was just later in my 20s, but I thought, it's not for me, so I'm just going to stay here and
That's cool. Life with no
maybe
regrets.
just stay in my comfort zone. I don't know, but I don't regret not going overseas.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of nice because you have Australia kind of like your home base, but then like every year or so you would go out and travel, but you always have somewhere like home to return to.
Yeah, exactly. You get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, and tell me more about sort of like your career. You sort of did more sort of like the HRE route, and how did you sort of decide that, I guess?
So I did a degree, I did a Bachelor of Business majoring in HR, and then I did an extended major in HR, which was a little bit pointless. But anyhow, my dad actually was a HR manager. He worked for Telstra at one point, and also Queensland Rail. So he had a long career in HR. So when I didn't go down the dietitian path, I thought, well, out of all the aspects of business, what appeals to me the most? And the HR aspect was something that really appealed to me in terms of, just the people engagement. There's so many different facets of HR as well that you can kind of get involved in. So when I was starting out my career, I mentioned earlier, I started out in a law firm, so I was a legal secretary, and then I was like, I don't want to do this forever. So actually, because I deferred for a few years from university, I didn't graduate until 2012. So I went back as sort of a mature age student, so to speak, and I was also working at Norton Fulbright in a law firm at the time of me finishing my studies, which was a really nice balance of kind of, I was working full-time, studying part-time, so I kind of did the degree as a means to an end, to be perfectly honest with you, because like I said, I was never academic, but you know, I really wanted to finish it, so I did. And then when I started out as a HR administrator, I got exposed to a lot of different types of work in HR, seeing the employee life cycle from start to finish, basically. And I had a really great team. I had a really great manager, which really helped that. And then I probably spent too long at that firm, even though I got promoted through different roles. I probably spent a bit too long there, but I was comfortable. Yeah. And so it got to a point where I then started to challenge myself around, well, what do I actually want to do? I don't necessarily want to stay in this kind of role. I want to experience different industries. I enjoyed working in professional services, but I thought, you know, for me at this stage of my career, I really need to experience other industries to, you know, just be a more well-rounded HR professional. So I left that role. I worked in an architecture for a little while. That was very short-lived. It probably wasn't the right fit for me, so I tried it, but then that was at that point in my career where I was like, now what? You know, this isn't right. So I actually went back to Norton Fulbright, but I moved to Sydney. And I didn't do the same job. I had a purely recruitment role, which was a really great opportunity for me to see, you know, whether that was something that I wanted to do longer term. I stayed back with Norton Fulbright for about 18 months. I lived in Sydney and I lived in Melbourne as well. So Sydney for 6 months, Melbourne for 12 months. And then I kind of worked through that talent engagement advisor role. And then again, I went through another thought process of my career going, oh gosh, do I really want to continue recruiting people? I really genuinely want to, you know, try something outside of law. I think I went back to Norton Fulbright. It was comfortable. I was moving interstate, so I knew the people and it was a bit of an easier transition. But then when I came back from Melbourne to Brisbane, you know, going through all the different thought processes, where my strengths were, what I enjoyed, where I kind of saw my career heading, I decided to move into an early talent focused space. So I worked for a company called APA, and we, at the time, I was hired to support the early talent program, so the graduate program, the intern program. And during my time there, I actually stepped into a consultant role where I was able to take more of a strategic lead on those programs. So APA are energy infrastructure. So I was hiring graduates and interns across a lot of different disciplines, so engineering, business, you know, like HR, IT, safety, finance. So it was a really great way of, you know, getting exposure to a different size business. They were a national, not international. So that experience was really valuable. And so then from there, I thought, you know, I'd always kind of obviously known about UQ and wanted to see how I could use all of my HR, recruitment and industry experience to take into higher education. And when I knew of UQ, particularly when I was working for Norton Fulbright, I always had a strong connection to law, so and had worked with careers and employability teams before. And so I thought I'll throw my hat in the ring and applied for a job at the end of last year in the team, and I got it. And I think this role it complements my professional experience really well, because what we do here is helping students navigate that process of, well, you know, I need to do a little bit more than just study while I'm at uni, so helping them navigate and understand the importance of that, I really enjoy, and giving back and using the experience that I've had from industry about what employers actually do, what they look for, what's important, you know, the do's and don'ts kind of thing. And so that's been really a nice sort of transition into this role, and I'm really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's funny how life kind of turns out. It sort of makes you know, everything that you've done before sort of connects the dots and you can sort of use it.
It's kind of nice, and I think, you know, it's very rare, I suppose, for people just to stick with one career nowadays. You might find that you have 4 or 5 different careers in your lifetime, and by careers I mean different roles, and, you know, the experience that you have from one thing is always going to complement what you do in the next, regardless of whether it's, you know, kind of similar or if it's just slightly different. But I've really enjoyed being able to. It hasn't been an easy process, like trying to make those decisions and navigating and figuring out what is right for you. I think for me has been quite challenging because, you know, even to this day, I'm like, I don't know if this is a passion of mine, but I enjoy it, and I know where my strengths are and I know where I'm not so strong. And, you know, that's where you try and surround yourself with team members who can complement where you're not so strong, and vice versa. So I think, you know, I've kind of found that here, which is nice, and, you know, that team aspect for me was really important because in my last role I was working with a team who were excellent, but they were all out of Brisbane, so they were all in Sydney or Melbourne, and so that made it really challenging to make that personal connection. So for me, when I'm looking at my next opportunity, that team connection, that team environment, and, you know, finding your place and where you fit is really important to me. And I kind of found that a little bit more challenging in my last role. But here I found that it's kind of nice that we kind of fit. Yeah. And I kind of know where I stand, and I know my place in the team, and that's really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to do a little bit of backtracking more about Norton Bright, about the law firm. So when you said specifically that you probably stayed there for a bit too long, and so how do you sort of, I think a lot of people, since you've been working there for many years, it's like a lot of people, they find, you know, I'm on this track and it's steady and this is how you're going to keep progressing. A lot of people have stayed at firms for like their whole life. So how did you, like, what do you mean by, you know, a bit too long? Was it that you weren't growing in the role, or?
I think for me, it was kind of, in the size office that I was in at the time was quite small, and I had great colleagues, and I had really good mentorship, and I really enjoyed working with the people locally in my office and also interstate. But I think it was probably more, not that I stayed there too long, but I think at that point in my career, you know, there are certain aspects of the HR life cycle that I wasn't exposed to. You know, there's a lot of different aspects of HR that it's always good, I think, as a professional to have those different experiences. And I think I just got to a point where I knew that I didn't want my manager's job. And at the time that my manager wasn't going anywhere. And I sort of thought, well, where are there opportunities for me to grow and develop? And I think, you know, to do that, sometimes you need to look outside. And that's why I looked outside. But then I ended up going back. I just sort of changed my sort of specialty and my location, and that gave me a different element to my experience. So I don't regret it at all. I think my professional experience has made me who I am today, and I've really valued all of the colleagues that I've had. I just kind of think, you know, and I did get promoted, so I went from administrator, coordinator, advisor, and so you get more responsibility, and that was really excellent. I just think at the point I got a bit stale in my role, and I was like, well, I've kind of achieved what I need to here. I need to allow someone else to come in with a fresh perspective, and I also needed for my own professional development to move on so that I could learn different things and just be in different environments. And I think that's really important sometimes, and everyone's different. You know, there are lots of people who have stayed with the same company for 20 years, and you know, I can guarantee you that the person hasn't had the same job for 20 years. They've probably moved around into different types of work, different roles, be exposed to different projects, and I think that, you know, I suppose it all depends on your individual motivations and your interests, and where you get your energy from, and your sort of drive, and what motivates you. So.
Yeah, that's cool. And just out of curiosity, at what sort of year, what kind of mark did you find that the role was kind of getting a bit stale?
Probably around the 5-year mark.
Oh, that is quite a long term.
After I'd been there for about 5 years, I kind of was, and after I was promoted to advisor, I was kind of thinking, well, what's next? You know, and because the office that I was in, there were probably a lot more opportunities interstate than they were in Brisbane. And so that was at that point that I was kind of thinking, okay, well, if I want to do different things or be involved in different types of projects, then I probably either need to look at relocating or look at other external opportunities, because there was only so much. I think you kind of reach a point in your career where you can be challenged professionally and really get that development that you're looking for, or and that's okay. You don't need to stay with the same company for 20 years, but if you are that person, that's perfectly fine. And, congratulations to you.
Yeah. That's an easy life, right? You don't have to go.
Well, not always, but I suppose, you get comfortable, and I think for a certain period of time, I was kind of just cruising along and not really challenging myself. And I think, I really needed to do that.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess what was sort of the reaction from friends and family at the time? Were they like, you're crazy, you've been there for 5 years? Or?
No, not at all. Like, I think,
that's really good.
I think I went through a couple of rough patches where I was going through, contemplating my life and my existence and what I'm doing here. Which, and sometimes it took a toll on my mental health, but, you kind of got to make some hard decisions sometimes to grow and move forward. And I think I went through those. I've definitely gone through a couple of those periods in my career and my life. So, that's normal, I think. And, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. It's just at the time it always seems all consuming and very difficult and too hard. But once you get through it, it's fine.
Yeah. It all works out. Yeah.
It does.
And I think that's kind of interesting, because probably a lot of students that come to you sort of are feeling that way or will feel that way. So what is some sort of maybe strategies that have helped you sort of come out of it?
I think it's always good to surround yourself with people who you trust, who you can talk to. There's no shame in getting external help. There's only so much that your friends and family can talk to you about, and then giving you the same sort of advice all the time. So, talking to a professional, whether it be a counsellor or a psychologist, seeking that extra support. I've done that a few times in my career for various different reasons, and it really just helps to talk through with someone. So, I think having an outlet is also really important. So having like a hobby or something that you enjoy. Mine is smashing a hockey ball at the back of a net for my stress relief. But, having those activities outside of, to help you have that kind of release, I think is really important. Well, for me, it was, at least anyway. So, I think sometimes I've been one to bottle things up and let them, fester inside of you before you actually can then feel better. I think sometimes talking through situations or whether it's with someone you trust or someone who's qualified to help you with those things, can really help. But sometimes it's just simply taking a bigger perspective and go, it's not all about just, like, sometimes you get yourself into situations and your mindset around, like, I can't do it, it's too hard. But I think if you just take a step back and, think about how it, what the bigger context is sometimes. I've not been very good at that, but I think sometimes that is important.
Yeah, that's true. And also curious about the Sydney and Melbourne fund. Do you think that it really did help you, like that sort of location change if they're feeling a bit stuck? Is it something that you kind of recommend to people?
Oh, look, I'm not going to suggest that you just move to another state just to fix your problems. But for me, I think it was probably more of a personal development sort of situation where I, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed, living in another city, exploring another city, meeting new people. It was a really great opportunity for me. And, a big reason of me moving home was that my brother and his partner had a baby, so I have a nephew and they have another one on the way soon. So for me, that value of family outweighed, I suppose, the need to be in another city. And so that's why I looked to move back to Brisbane, was just to be closer to family, see my nephew grow up, be around for all the important family activities and the milestones and things like that was really important to me. So I think sometimes, you can definitely look at opportunities outside. It depends on what your goals and your aspirations are. But, Brisbane is a pretty big place, but it won't satisfy, everyone in terms of career and curiosity. And so I think going out and exploring what those options are is a good way of sort of seeing, and you can always try it. There's always someone, like, hopefully there's always a home to come back to in terms of, you have options. But I think the interstate option is definitely one for if people are curious and they want to consider sort of what their options. It's a good one.
Yeah, and it's kind of a safe move, right? It's like not as big as going internationally. It's sort of testing the waters.
Yeah, you can kind of test the waters. You can kind of, I think you need to try different things and figure out your own path and, where you find happiness and, contentment and things like that. And I don't know if I exactly found it down there, but it was a good experience for me.
Yeah, that's cool. And also tell me more a little bit about your career advisor role. So, like, how would you sort of break down the work? Is it like 20%, having one-on-one conversations with students, another percent doing SWEP and CEP? What's that kind of look like?
So my role primarily is managing our programs, 2 main programs. But I would say we all have a different portfolio of work in the team. So I look after professional experiences. We also have someone who looks after first year engagement, our international student cohort, our career development learning. So we've got, across our career advisors, there's sort of 5 different portfolios. I would say that, program management takes up a lot of my time. So there's a lot of planning to do pre each semester, and then there's the actual running of the program, achieving different milestones and helping the students through those different milestones. So that takes up a lot of time when those programs are active, and when the programs aren't running, there's a lot of opportunity to reflect on how the previous programs ran. Do we need to make any changes? Looking at how effective those different processes and programs have been. So there's a lot of in between to do, but then there's an element of student facing as well. So we do career consultations during the month. So I do about 4 hours a month of one-to-one career consultations, and then that's divided between all of us. And then we also have our student-facing workshops and things that we run during the semester and during the holidays as well. So next week we're supporting Recruitment Essentials Day, which is run by our student enrichment and team through UQ, and so we're supporting that. But that's largely student-facing activities like that as well. So I'd say it's a pretty good balance, and maybe 30% student, 30 or 40% student facing, and sort of 60% program management, where there's still elements of student facing there, but it's maybe more from behind a computer than it is face to face. So
yeah, that's cool. And in terms of more like when students come to you each month with questions, what are the kind of common questions that appear?
It really depends. So a lot of the time it's just understanding how they can build their employability. We get a lot of questions around work experience and internships.
Like how to get internships?
How to get internships, the different ways that they can, different programs that they can engage in, or how they can find a job or a work experience opportunity. Sometimes it might be I'm having a bit of a crisis around what am I majoring in? What are the career opportunities with these types of degrees? And so we get a lot of questions about that. I have a tie into our law school, so I'm our law school contact for the careers team, and so
because of your
this last week I had a couple of consults specifically with law students because law recruitment season is coming up, and so there's a little bit of help around cover letters and resumes and just advice on a couple of those sort of things. So it's rarely varied. The types of questions that we get are always different.
Yeah, that keeps you on your toes.
Oh yeah, and there's lots of questions where I don't know the answers to either, so it's sort of just, sometimes it helps just to go and talk with someone about the different options, and a student might come and, they've already given it some thought, but it helps to verbalise it and get someone else's opinion on whether they're on the right track, or, it might just help them with their decision-making process as well, because we're not here to tell you what to do, we're here to help guide and support and provide you with different tools and things that you can consider and do to help you get to your own decision.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. And when a student comes to you and says, I don't know what I want to do with my life, how do you sort of tackle it down?
That's a really interesting one, and I think sometimes it's sort of just breaking it down and getting to know the student a little bit more and what their interests are, their motivations for what they're studying, and really just help them. We can, give them some tools or some activities to do to really understand, well, where are their strengths, their weaknesses, what are their values. So it really depends on the individual student, but those ones are always really hard.
So hard.
But it's a bit of a journey, and I think I think what I say to them a lot is that the decision you make now is not often going to determine the rest of your life. But I always say to people, do something that you're interested in, because spending 5 years at uni studying something that you hate, you're not gonna do well. And what's the point if you're doing something that you're studying that you don't enjoy? You always have options.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. Yep, so we're nearly at the end of the podcast, just a few kind of more to wrap up.
Sure.
Yeah, so Katie, that deep question. In your mind, what do you think is the meaning of life?
Oh, gosh. The meaning of life. Look, I mean, I think when I was younger, I definitely had a mentality of, working to live. I need a job, I need to earn lots of money, I need to, if I'm not earning lots of money, I'm not going to be successful. And I think, as I've gotten a bit older and more experience, I really realised that finding joy in the small things is really important. My family is really important to me. I don't have a family of my own in the sense that I don't have children, and I'm not attached to anyone, but my parents and my brother and my nephew and my close friends, that those values are really important to me. So I think the meaning of life is such an ambiguous question, but I think just finding joy in the small things and not sweating don't sweat the small stuff. It's I've been one to kind of sweat the small stuff a lot, and it really doesn't help sometimes your mental health and your overall well-being and your happiness. And I think for me it's just about living life to its fullest and really not getting bogged down in the small stuff. And just enjoying the small things. Like if you want to go and have an expensive dinner and a couple of glasses of wine, then just do it. If you want to treat yourself, I definitely treat myself to things like massages and pedicures and manicures. Do the things that make you happy and just try and make time for yourself. Life is busy, it's hectic, sometimes it's hard. The last couple of years have been hard for everyone, I think, going through so much uncertainty, but just valuing the things that are important to you and just say yes to things. It's probably my motto for the rest of 22. Just say yes. Not to everything, but just, be open to those different experiences.
That sounds good. That's some pretty good advice. And so also another question. Katie, if you won the lottery tomorrow, how would your life change? What would you do differently, I guess?
I'm not quite sure I'd be sitting here if I won the lottery tomorrow. However, I think I'd still try and have some sort of work. If I was completely honest, I'd probably try and maybe open my own business. I'd love to open a cafe or something like that, where you can kind of be your own boss. I think if finance wasn't an issue, that would definitely be something that I would explore a bit more. Having the freedom to maybe go and do something a bit more creative would be really nice. But I'd also probably like to take my family overseas on a holiday somewhere. Maybe go and spend 6 months in Italy learning Italian and eating and drinking would be lovely. So, I think doing something like that, but I wouldn't just, maybe I'd quit my job. I don't know.
I hope you win the lottery.
Me too. That would be lovely.
And tomorrow would be good.
Tomorrow would be good. Although I did notice that the Strathpine newsagent in my sort of where I live, there have been 3 major lotto winners there in the last, since this year. So I was like, I think that's my sign to go and buy a lotto ticket. They had 10 winners the other day and they each took home $73,000 and I was like, that would be amazing.
That's awesome. And so on to the final question is, What do you think your ideal perfect day in the life is? Like, what time do you wake up? What do you do?
Oh my goodness. Ideal perfect day. I don't know. Like, I think my ideal wake up time is somewhere between 5:45 and 6:30 a.m.
One of those people.
I don't necessarily think I'm a great morning person, but you know, if I had an ideal day, it'd be a 6 a.m. wake up, probably a 7 a.m. so some sort of exercise in the morning, or a bit of a slower start to the day. You know, work is something that you know I have to do, and also I want to do. Like, I think it's good, but I don't know, just like I'm pretty content at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty nice. I don't like this cold weather, but you know, making some time for some exercise or something for myself.
Yeah.
And then, you know, cooking dinner. I hate cooking dinner for myself, but in an ideal day, I would cook myself dinner. But yeah, I think that's you know, just allowing time in your day for doing something that you enjoy, that makes you happy, is important, no matter how small it is.
Yes. Yeah, that's some good advice. So we're pretty much at the end of the podcast.
Cool.
Really thank you for being here. And
no worries, thanks for having me.
The experience was fun.
Yeah, it was definitely fun.
Yeah,
it was good.
that's good
Rehashing
stuff.
lots of memories. Lots of feelings. I was like, oh gosh.
Don't
That was
cry,
good.
don't cry.
No, it's all good.
Okay, let's wave bye.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.